Hello everyone, welcome to a new chess video. This video is going to become a favorite for many of you, I'm sure, because I'm going to show you a totally impressive opening, which is the Spanish opening, with some absolutely terrifying lines full of traps. And above all, these are traps where if your opponent doesn't fall for them, it's no big deal, because we'll still be in a great position anyway. The thing is, there will be so many traps that they're bound to fall into one of them. First of all, chess teacher, what is the Spanish opening? Because if I don't even know what the Spanish opening is, how can I follow along? The Spanish opening occurs after e4, e5, the double king's pawn, knight f3, and knight c6. Look, it's the most normal thing in the world, and here we play bishop b5. This, friends, is the Spanish opening. So here, we're going to start with the most logical option for black, which is the Berlin defense. There are many options, but right now the most popular one is knight f6. Don't worry, we're going to cover many lines. There are two main moves here, d3 and castling. And in this video, we're going to recommend castling, all right? And you'll see why. By castling, we're already giving away a pawn. Right off the bat, as you can see, the e4 pawn is hanging. What does it mean that it's hanging? It means nobody's defending it. That's why, if they want, the black pieces can capture that pawn, which is actually the main line, okay? The main line here is to play d4, but we're going to recommend a different move. But first, let me mention how the main variation works or goes, because you should at least be familiar with it, okay? Since it's the most played and the most studied. But I'm not going to recommend it to you, and I'll explain why in a moment. d4 here would be the main variation. Notice that taking this pawn would already be a bit dangerous for black. Yeah, they're opening the king's file with the knight, and with a simple move like rook e1, we'd already be putting too much pressure on this knight and would likely end up winning it, okay? That's why this pawn isn't captured here. Instead, the knight retreats to d6. This is the main line, okay? Attacking this bishop here, practically forcing us to capture this knight so we don't lose the center pawn, all right? And once this pawn here is captured, it's simply recaptured, normally and calmly. And after pawn takes pawn, notice they have to move this knight. We trade queens, and this would be the main line, okay? Notice we're in a bit of an endgame because the queens are gone. And simply put, what's good and what's bad about it? On the plus side, our king is safe and our opponent hasn't castled, but on the downside, our opponent has a bishop pair that we don't have. It's a very well studied, a very balanced endgame that usually ends in a draw. That's why I won't recommend this line. Instead, we're going to move on to a super aggressive line, which is the kind you guys like. Let's go. Let's review, because I don't want anyone to get lost. We play the RUY LOPEZ, this one here, Berlin defense, we castle, and now for the black pieces. The logical move they have here is to capture this pawn that's hanging, okay? Fine, we've seen the main variation with d4. But I'm going to recommend the move here, which is even more logical directly, which is rook e1. We're attacking the knight, and also indirectly the pawn on e5. Well, it looks like a very normal position, but it hides many secrets. And if you manage to master this video, you're going to win many more games. So pay attention to this video, okay? Highly, highly, highly recommend it. Fine, we're attacking the knight and also the pawn. So here we have to see what black usually plays. The most used move here is knight d6. Why? Because they retreat the knight while attacking our bishop, right? Notice that it's the most logical move. If they decide, for example, to play d5, also a super logical move to defend this knight and have everything protected, we could simply capture here. Notice we have a very good pin with this bishop, and we bring in the knight to put on more pressure. That's why we directly rule out the move d5. The same would happen with f5, for example, where it's true there'd be no pin, we'd simply kick the knight, and when it leaves, we could capture the e5 pawn, and the king would be super weakened. So let's calculate what happens with the move that seems best, knight d6, which attacks our bishop. This is where our little traps are going to start. Obviously, first we'll take this pawn, right? That's why we've placed the rook on e1. Now don't anyone take with the rook, okay? Don't sacrifice the exchange here. We take with the knight, okay? And now notice that if they take here, we could take directly with the rook, right? This would be the most normal thing, right? Look, knight takes, and here the normal thing would be rook takes, giving a check to the king. But wait, be careful because I brought you this recipe a long time ago on the channel. We're gonna go deep into some lines now because it's a super aggressive variation. And you're gonna win many, many games. Knight c3. Incredible. Right here, we're already setting up a significant number of traps. First, we're down a piece, okay? We've lost a knight, right? Temporarily, don't worry. We've lost a knight, fine. Now we're sacrificing this knight, more or less, because we could recapture it, but our idea isn't to recapture it, but to come to d5. You'll see it now. It's totally impressive. So stay tuned here, because we're setting a trap, but a very safe trap, because if they don't fall for it, we'll just continue as normal, okay? What happens if they capture this bishop? Let's see. We're simply going to continue with the following. Now we're down two pieces. We capture this knight with check. Now we do. We are down a piece. They have to block. Notice that. Only move, block, and if you wanted, you could already win back this knight, right? And you'd be even on material. But that's not our idea. Instead, our idea is to play knight to d5. Look, knight to d5, a tremendous move. We're putting on incredible pressure. We're attacking this bishop with two pieces, only defended by the queen, meaning they'd have to give up material at least, and we're putting on brutal pressure. Now let's see, can black save themselves from all this? Well, the truth is they have it very tough here. Notice the logical move is castling. Since they're up a piece, sorry, they sacrificed this other piece, but at least they're castled, right? This will be the most normal thing. But notice that after knight takes bishop check, forced if they don't want to give up the queen, they have to move. And now, here you'd have at least two alternatives to win. One would be the simple one, and the other would be, well, more than simple. Both are simple, but one would be to secure it, and the other would be to finish it off brilliantly, right? The simple one is, okay, right now we're even on pieces. So I trade this knight to free the rook from defense, and when I trade it, I capture an extra piece, and I stay with an extra piece. Easy as can be, and I'm going to win the game if I play more or less normally. The aggressive variation is to play directly with the queen to h5. You'll tell me, hey, chess teacher, but here you have the chance to get a piece advantage and you're not doing it. Yeah, but notice that now, no matter how much they try to save this piece advantage, we could even sacrifice the queen to give Anastasia's mate. Do you know what Anastasia's mate is or not? We take here, and since the knight is covering these two exits for the king, we'd simply give checkmate with the rook. Notice it's the quarter, mate. It's the same as if there were two pawns here, right? If it were like that, the king can't get out. It's just that the pawns don't need to be there because the knight covers both exits. So here you have two options, right? What I just said. You can even capture here and win a piece. You'd have a piece advantage. Or the aggressive one. All right, don't worry. We're going to keep reviewing it, okay? I want it to be clear to everyone and for you to win lots of games. And you can capture here on the next move. This position, sorry, is totally won. So we've seen that knight to c3 sets up some totally impressive traps. Now then, if they take the bishop, we've seen that this was very bad for black. And in every case, they'd end up losing. We have rook takes knight, we just saw it, and then we come in with the knight directly through here, without winning back this knight. You remember, right? But what happens if they play bishop to e7? A better move. Black has an extra piece. We can recapture this knight, and we'd be exactly even. But notice that black doesn't suffer at all now. But notice that here, we give him the chance to fall into the same trap again. If they get too clever now and capture this bishop, we'd be in the same position as before. We wouldn't recapture with either the knight or the rook, but instead we'd jump with the knight to d5 again with that same pressure in the center. You remember, right? We're in exactly the same position. If here, instead of castling, which we've already seen what happens, for example, they try to play d6, attacking a rook, we'd simply attack right here. Rook takes bishop, we'd give check, so the king would have to move. The king would stay in the center in a very bad position. We'd be in a very advantageous position, okay? So here, we'd be much better off. If after knight c3, black plays bishop e7, as we've seen so far, and when we take, they castle, then they've played very well, okay? They haven't fallen for our knight c3 trap. Perfect. They played bishop e7 first and then castled. What do we have to do then? Well, it's time to withdraw our bishop, okay? Look, if they've managed to do this order, then they've dodged all the traps. It's absolutely fine, because we still have a privileged position. And what are we going to do? Well, we're going to place the bishop on d3 for a very obvious reason that you're going to see next. This knight should be here. Look at the whole path it's taken to get here. It should be on f6, because you already know that the knight on f6 is the best defender of the castle, because it protects the h7 square, h5, and even squares further ahead. The knight now on d6 does absolutely nothing to protect the castle. So we'll have this bishop pointing over here, the queen can come in, the rook can come in. Notice that in this position, they haven't fallen for the traps, but I'm sure all of you would like to play it with the white pieces. So let's take a good look at it. Don't be afraid to repeat the lines in the video. You can see that the more times we repeat them, the more they'll stick in your head, okay? We're here in the Spanish opening, Berlin defense. Okay. The more times we repeat the lines, the more you'll see how we got there, and the clearer it'll be for you. Otherwise, in your games, you won't know what to do. Here, I recommend castling. They have to capture this pawn here, because it's the most valuable option for black. We can see many more options. You already know that chess has 10,000 options, but we can't cover them all in one video. This is the best one, so we're going to cover this one for now. Rook 1 to attack the knight and the pawn. And here, the best move, as we've seen before, is knight d6, attacking this bishop. That's why we've come this far, okay? Now we're going to capture this pawn here. They're going to capture the knight here. And instead of capturing directly with the knight, we're going to set up, okay? The little trap, well, the trap, full of traps, knight c3. There's a very bad move here that I haven't evaluated before, and I'm going to explain why, because it's super interesting, which you have to be quite attentive to. Realize how we can win with this move, okay? f6. They defend the knight with the pawn. Apparently, it seems like a pretty interesting move, right? They're simply defending the pawn. It's true that it weakens my king a bit, but it seems like absolutely nothing's happening, right? Well, it's a very dangerous move, and you have to know how to punish it. Remember one thing, we're down a piece, okay? So now we're going to try to pin this knight. Look, we're not just going to try, we're going to do it. We have the rook pinning the knight and the king, and you already know that what is placed between a piece and the king, that piece is pinned and most likely will manage to win it if we can attack it with a pawn. So we attack it with this pawn, and now we're practically certain to win this piece. What happens is that now they can take this one here, and temporarily they're up 2 pieces. 2 pieces why? Because they have 2 knights and 2 bishops, and we have 1 knight and 1 bishop. Okay, first we win back a piece. What happens is that here, black will say, well, I'll capture here attacking the queen, right? And now I have 2 more pieces than you again, and you can only win back 1, right? I'm sure all of you have thought this. Well, now what we're going to do is take advantage of the pin and give this discover check. You have to pay attention. The good thing about YouTube is that you can watch this video as many times as necessary, okay? I try to go slowly, although many of you tell me I go too fast. I feel bad. I don't want the video to last 3.5 hours, and this way you can watch it as many times as needed. I'm very sorry. I'm going to try to go as slowly as possible, okay? We're given this discover check. Well, they can't block with the queen because they'd lose the queen, nor with the bishop because they'd lose the bishop with drastic consequences, right? So they have to move the king away. Well, now if we decided to win back this knight, we'd be at a disadvantage. Okay? Why? Because if we take here, we're down a piece. 2 of the opponent's bishops against 1 bishop on our side. So what are we going to do? Sacrifice the queen. Pay attention, okay? Because it's a complicated line. But look, well, complicated. It's not complicated at all if you know it by heart, but it would be complicated if you haven't seen this video, right? So we'll capture here, sacrificing the queen, and you'll tell me, chess teacher, you've gone crazy. And what will I tell you? As always, indeed, I've gone completely crazy, but this line works, and we're going to end up better off. What happens is that if they capture your queen here, we simply win it back by capturing this rook, and we place it in a better position, right? So we're left in a winning position here. We attack the knight, we attack this pawn. Black is completely lost, right? That's if they capture the queen. Of course, you'll tell me, if they capture the queen, everything's fine. But what happens if they capture this pawn here and avoid all these problems? Notice they still have 1, 2, and 3 pieces, and I only have 1. The 2-piece advantage of which I can only win back 1. And in fact, now I can't win it back, because if I do, look, it attacks both rooks, and this would be a disaster. So, chess teacher, what do I do? Well, taking advantage of the fact that we've eliminated this pawn here, look, this pawn here, what do we want to do? Queen h5 check, right? We wanted to go all in, but g6 avoided all these problems for us. It attacked our queen, they could bring out the knight, therefore this wouldn't be a good idea. But that's why we traded here first, to eliminate this pawn, and now we can bring in the queen. Hint? I was going to say intercrop. Intermediate move, attacking the king, check to the king, this king has to move away. Where can he go? Well, he'll probably have to go to either this square or this one, okay? Both are equally bad. Let's look at them. It doesn't matter. Let's assume first he goes to this square right here. The move is the same no matter where he goes. We're not going to take back the knight. That's important. Instead, we'll play the bishop attacking the queen. Why? This queen can't escape. The rook cuts off all her exits, and the bishop blocks the diagonal. Therefore, we've trapped his queen. And many of you will say, hey, chess teacher, you're going crazy, because I can just block with the bishop. And now this queen has an escape route. Well, if you try to block with the bishop, you're definitely walking into a mating net. First, I give you this check, right? As you can see, this check. And now what's happening? If you move, I checkmate you. See? Check. And when they capture, we come in with the queen and mate, right? But if they block with the bishop, then they escape the mate. Well, no. Here we're going to make a very beautiful move. Notice that this bishop is pinned this way. Well, now we're going to pin it this way. Look, incredible. This really is incredible. He can't take the queen because the king is pinned. And he can't take the bishop because we play queen takes rook check. And not only that, but the king couldn't go protect the queen because the rook is blocking this file. So when he moves, we'll capture his queen. Look at what a beautiful position. We've left the king completely exposed. He can't do absolutely anything. And now when he moves, we're simply going to capture his queen. And we'd be left with a totally massive material advantage. Wait, because now comes a good part of the video. You know, that when I show you something impressive, I always say, now comes the moment of truth. Now comes the moment of truth. Look, knight f6, Berlin defense, let's castle. The repetition is important so that it's clear to you. He captures here, and what do? Rook e1. Look at our move, knight d6, and what do? We capture this pawn. We see the main line, which was to capture this knight right here. First, I don't know if I've told you or not, if they capture this bishop right away, they've lost the game. You have to keep this in mind because many people fall directly into this silly trap. Why? Because after knight takes knight, we have a discovered check with the rook, and we're going to capture the queen no matter what. We're given check. If they block with the bishop, we capture the queen. And if they block with the queen, we capture the queen. So we'd win the queen no matter what. So what should you do? Above all, if they capture this bishop, knight takes knight wins the game. You need to know this, okay? Not sure if I had mentioned it to you. Here, many of you will be thinking, well, if they're pressuring this knight and I don't want trouble, what if I try to defend with everything and move back? This would already be a serious mistake because our pressure would be so strong that there'd be no way to stop it, right? It's true that we're equal in material, but our pieces are in much better positions. Now, are they attacking this bishop? Yes, but we're not going to move it away, honestly. We're simply going to play queen f3. Threatening checkmate with the knight and the queen. You see it, right? If they capture this bishop for free, we simply deliver mate. So this bishop is untouchable. All right, so this point needs to be defended. Now, you might ask, chess teacher, isn't this point defended? Yes, but we need extra defense to capture this bishop. If you don't defend and play g6 to develop and castle, I'll play bishop c4, aiming my pieces at you, and you're in trouble, as there's nothing you can do. Also, if you capture this bishop at any point, you'll fall into mate again. That's why I'm telling you that you have to defend this point. Surely all of you have thought of f6. It defends and attacks the knight. A very interesting move. Well, notice that now we've played queen f3, f6, and queen h5. We move the queen again. We're creating weaknesses, right? Now we're attacking the king. And when they play g6, okay, we sacrifice right here. Why can't we sacrifice? Because this knight is pinned, it can't take, and this pawn is pinned because we take the rook. So here we be attacking the rook, we be attacking the bishop, we be delivering a discovered check. So the black pieces would have nothing to do here. Hey, chess teacher, you know what happens? I love your lines, but then when I go play myself, they don't play the lines you say, and they make weird moves. Well, for example, in these lines, you have to know how to take advantage if, instead of playing what I tell you, they play a totally random move. For example, if they ignore the threat entirely and play, say, Queen f6, putting another piece on the attack, something like that, notice that we're constantly threatening a discovered attack with the knight. In this case, a move as simple as knight takes knight would be winning the game. Once again, why? Knight takes knight, discover check. It's true we don't win the queen, but now the king can't move. They have to block. If they block with the queen, we capture it. And if they block with the bishop, well, we just capture it again with check. And notice that the position is falling apart. We're up 2 pieces. The king is going to lose the right to castle. That's why usually when I explain some lines, it's because there are other lines, many others, that you have to know how to punish by playing and finding the way. The thing is, obviously, I can't cover every line in chess because they're infinite. Hey, chess teacher, let's make a deal. You teach me one of these secondary lines and how to punish it brutally, and I, as a reward, being the good subscriber I am, will leave you a like and a nice comment, and even subscribe to the channel because I like your content. All right then, deal. I'm going to show you an impressive line to end the video that will surely be your favorite. You're going to see what happens if they try to go out of book, okay? We castle, and here they capture our pawn. We play rook e1, and notice we've seen that the right move was to come here. This one was punished, this one was punished, and this is the one we've seen how to punish in the video. What happens if they go somewhere else? Hey, chess teacher, nothing's happening here either, right? We're down a pawn. At most we can win it back, and that's it. Well, stay tuned, because here I'm going to show you how to really punish it if some smart aleck tries to escape the video's theory. We'll play d4 to start with. We attack the knight and we attack the pawn with 3 pieces, right? It doesn't look serious because we're down a pawn and at most we'll win the pawn back. Because they simply have to move the knight away. Not here because boom, a double attack and they lose a piece. Right? The typical fork. So they have to go somewhere else. For example, here doesn't seem the most logical, right? Fine. So here, how can we proceed? If our opponent has moved the knight well, then we capture right here. This position is a massacre for white. There's no move where they can save themselves. For example, here there are discovered pins. Our opponent tries to escape with bishop e7, wanting to castle fast. So what can we do if our opponent does that? Well, we simply come over here and we pin absolutely everything. As much as they try to poke at us, this would be even worse because they'd be opening the line for the queen. That's why bishop e7 doesn't work here. Another move would be, what happens if I capture the knight? Let's see, if my problem is the knight and all the discovered attacks, I capture it and nothing's happened here. Well, here we recapture it with the rook, giving check, and now black can really start praying again. They just can't do anything, look. They cover with the bishop again, and you'll tell me, chess teacher, but that's it. There's nothing left to do. Well, simply the same thing again. We come with the bishop, we pin absolutely everything, we attack with 2 pieces. This bishop can no longer be defended. They have to play f6 no matter what. And now what? Do we capture? No. Why? Because if we capture, we come here. No, because they can play g6. So, what do? First, we sacrifice the bishop, and now, when they capture, we enter with the queen. Notice that this is directly a mating net, right? If they come here because they have to escape, we redirect our bishop. Notice that what we're doing is placing our pieces in a way that they fit. See how easy it is? You don't have to learn all this by heart. Simply, if they go off theory, any move that is halfway reasonable towards the enemy king is going to end up winning it. What are we threatening? Mate here, and it can only be stopped with d5. We capture it with the rook attacking the queen, and when the queen moves or does anything else, for example, if the queen comes here, then we give mate immediately. How can we give mate here? There's several options, right? But the simplest one, Queen h6, they have to step into the pin, and when they step into the pin, any move of the rook, would give checkmate. It's a super interesting opening and full of traps. And I don't want the video to go on much longer, but if you're enjoying it, I have so much content for this opening that we could stretch it out for several more videos. If you liked it, as always, leave it in the comments. Give me a big thumbs up. It's the indicator I use to know if you like the video or not. If you've made it to the end especially, I'd really appreciate it. And subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any videos like this. See you in the next video, friends. Bye.